The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are just a few minutes ahead of schedule, mainly because we wanted to give you a chance to come onto the webinar and just kind of get settled in and say a few hellos to people. I hope you are really well this evening, and we do appreciate you giving up your Tuesday evening to listen to this informative webinar on the microbiome. It's really an outline into what the microbiome is and kind of to help you just to get to grips with how you can communicate it more effectively, but equally as much how you can learn from your own health, your own personal health, as far as microbiome health is concerned. So I'll just say hello to a few people. So let's start with Tina Savage. Good evening, welcome, and thank you for joining us this evening. My good friend Sian is on. Sian, hello, and thank you for coming. Nicola Kenworth is here. Marjorie Kerr is here. Welcome, both of you. Fatima Ford, I hope you are healing well, Fatima. I know you've had a shoulder injury, so sending all my best wishes to you. Claire Sharples, Claire Johnson. Who else have we got on? Fiona Carr, welcome, Fiona. Lots of people starting to join now. The numbers are going up, so it's lovely to see you all here. Lindsay Burgess, welcome, Lindsay. Not seen you for a while. I hope you're keeping really well. So we are going to start in a few minutes. Well, actually, it's actually 8 o'clock now, and I've been told that I have to keep to time this evening. And for those of you that know me, I can talk for England when it comes to things that I am passionate about and enthusiastic. So I will make a start, and I'm sure there will be more people that come on as we go through the webinar. So for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Sue Thomas. I'm a functional nutritionist, and I have been in the wellness industry for 15 years, and specifically in more recent years been focusing on the health of the microbiome, resetting the health of the intestine, helping people to transform their lives, basically. So this evening, what I am going to do is I'm going to take you through a journey through the microbiome, essentially, and to help you understand why the microbiome is being compromised. But before we do anything else, what is the microbiome? So there is no doubt that we have a global health crisis in the Western world. I'm sure everyone on here will agree with me. Obesity is at bigger numbers than we've ever seen before. Diabetes, 700 people a day are being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. 1 in 4 people being diagnosed with cardiovascular disease, and then we've got more and more prevalence of things like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, or other debilitating autoimmune conditions, and then just simple things that can impact on us on a day-to-day basis: IBS, acid reflux, poor sleep, lack of energy, compromised skin conditions. So all of these issues can be linked back to really the core of good health, which is the microbiome. If we are going to help people to manage their health on a day-to-day basis, we need to understand what the microbiome is. So to give you a little bit of background into the science of the microbiome really is all the bacteria that live on us and in us. We actually are only about 10% human. We're made up of 100 trillion cells, 90 of which are fungi, bacteria, macrophages that live in us, microbiotic microflora that live in us, predominantly in our intestine, but also up our nose, in our ears, in our eyes, on our skin. And never before have we seen how important the health of this bacteria is to our health. It's a very symbiotic relationship. If we are going to be healthy, we need that good bacteria, or by a measure of 80% to 20% to be good bacteria. And the majority of these bacteria live in the intestine, and we're going to go through a little journey to explore how that impacts our health. But most importantly, we've got things like neurotransmitters like serotonin, endorphins, melatonin. We've got B vitamins that are created by the microbiome. We've got a direct link between the intestine and the brain. So whatever is happening with that good bacteria in the intestine will come out in our brain. So if our intestine is slow and sluggish, If our microbiome is compromised, that's how we will feel on a day-to-day basis. So supporting and helping those bacterial populations to flourish has never been more important than ever before. There is a saying, all disease begins in the intestine, and it's a 2,500-year-old saying, and it isn't rubbish. It's totally true. And we are starting more and more to see just how important the health of the bacteria in the intestine is to us. So if our bacterial intestinal population is not functioning as it should be functioning, this can have an impact on our brain, on our nervous system, on our immunity, on the way we metabolize food, on our sleep, on our energy levels, on our hormone balance, on our skin conditions, and so, so much more. And as I say, 21st century life, we are starting to realize the importance of having a healthy functioning microbiome. Without that healthy functioning microbiome, we are compromising our quality of life. So let's just get to grips with what happens when we eat, because all of our food comes from the nutrients we consume. And if we are not consuming nutrients effectively, the body will not be able to heal itself effectively. The body is a very sophisticated machine, and it is able to heal itself if it is given the right nutrients. When we don't feed the body, particularly the microbiome, the right nutrients, that's when we start to see health issues developing. And so by ensuring that we are consuming the right types of foods and ensuring that we are able to digest those foods effectively is super, super important. So when we eat, we put food in our mouths, obviously, and the saliva that we create in our mouth starts to break down the carbohydrates in the food that we consume. And when that food hits our stomach acid, the food should be of the right quality to allow the right pH balance to form. So if we have a diet that's predominantly processed food, the processed food doesn't contain something called food enzymes. So those food enzymes, that processed food, when it hits our stomach, we should release food enzymes into our stomach to create the right pH balance. So if our diet is natural and we are creating it from scratch, the foods we will consume will be full of food enzymes that create the right pH balance in the stomach. If we have a more predominantly processed diet, when we consume that food and the food hits our stomach, we don't release the food enzymes in the right way. So the pH balance isn't the right balance in the stomach acid, so that when it moves on to the next stage of digestion, we don't activate the pancreas to release further enzymes for further food breakdown. So we can start to have a compromised breakdown of the nutrients in the food that we are consuming initially. If we're consuming a healthy, balanced diet, we will have those food enzymes in our food. They will create the right pH balance in the stomach. The food will move on to the pancreatic stage where enzymes are released, and the food will be further broken down. And those nutrients will be absorbed across the gut wall. They will nourish the microflora in the intestine, and they will be able to be absorbed across the gut wall so that we can use those nutrients for healing or whatever it is that the body needs those nutrients for at any one time. If our diet is more processed, then we don't see that cycle of absorption of nutrients starting. It's broken right from the very beginning. So this process of eating far too much processed foods in our diet is leading to the disruption of the microbiome. But it's not just that. There's many other factors that are involved in the degradation of the health of the microbiome. All those microflora that live in the intestine predominantly are being compromised by 21st century life. So let's take a little bit of a deeper delve into the factors that play a role in either supporting or destroying the health of the microbiome. We now have a diet that is created for taste. It's not for health. We have foods sitting on shelves for a long period of time, and they are full of chemical preservatives. They're high in sugar and bad fats. They're cheap and easy to produce. And when we have foods that are kept in cold storage for long periods of time, the nutrient content in those foods start to degrade. So we might be thinking we're eating a healthy diet, But if we're eating an apple, for example, now that was picked last September, the nutrient content will have depleted by half for every single month that it's kept in cold storage. So we may not actually be taking on board enough nutrients, or we're trying to take on board the nutrients, but we're not actually managing to do that, because 21st century life and the way food is now manufactured is compromising our ability to do that. And also, we are force growing foods out of season. So strawberries are a great example, grown in polytunnels for the majority of the year. Anything that is grown out of season does not have the full nutrient content formed within that product, simply because it is grown out of season. So the first thing that is happening as far as our microbiome is concerned is our diet is inconveniencing the health of our microbiome. And then we have to take into consideration as well the overuse of medicines and antibiotics in 21st century life. Doctors are getting far better at controlling the prescription of antibiotics, but antibiotics have been prescribed for many, many years now, and they not only kill the bacteria that they're designed to kill, the bad bacteria, but they also kill the good bacteria, the microbiome population, the population of good bacteria that helps to keep us in good health. So unless you know what you are doing to replenish and support the microbiome after taking a course of antibiotics, the effect of those antibiotics can come back to haunt you 20 years down the line. I have my own personal journey as far as antibiotics are concerned, and how I got into how my interest in gut health developed, because I had an ear infection that I ended up on about 25 days of very high dose antibiotics. Fast forward 2 years, and I am having to take a sleep in the afternoon. I am struggling with regular sinus infections. I've got thrush infections on my skin, and I just didn't know what was going on. And I went to see my own nutritional therapist, who advised me that I needed to go down a road of supporting my intestine, supporting my microbiome, in order to take back control of my health. Add to that things like the increased number of C-section births. When a baby is born, as it passes down the birth canal, it takes gulps of vaginal fluid or birthing fluid, and that helps for the microbiome to form in the early weeks of childhood. If you're born by C-section, you don't get the opportunity, or the baby doesn't get the opportunity to take those gulps of fluid to allow the microbiome population to form. Childhood infections, the whole cleanliness debate, that's another presentation altogether. But by encouraging our children to use antibacterial soaps and all those kind of things, they are not forming the bacterial populations on their hands that allow them to fight infection. So they are getting more infections than ever before, and they're having to take medications for those infections. And what that is doing is it's depleting the health of the microbiome over a long period of time. And really only in the last few years have we realized that we need to start supporting the microbiome after a period of medication in order to be able to bring our health back under control. Alcohol, sadly, can completely destroy the balance of the bacterium of the microbiome. A glass of alcohol can knock your microbiome out by about 80%. Now, if you are someone who is eating a good, healthy diet, and the health of your gut wall is strong, you have a glass of wine, and yes, it knocks the microbiome out, but the microbiome can repair itself because you are nourishing it with the right foods, with the right nutrients. But if your diet is more predominantly processed, or the health of your gut wall is compromised, that means that the microbiome population can take a long time to recover. So I'm not saying you can't ever drink alcohol again here, but just be mindful of the fact that it doesn't support the health of the microbiome, and used over a long period of time can lead to severe degradation in the health of the good bacteria in the intestine and allow for an overgrowth in bad bacteria. Plus, the sugar in alcohol will encourage the growth of yeast to build up, and the growth of bad bacteria like E. coli and Salmonella, etc., inside the intestine, which can have a knock-on effect to our mental well-being, to just our overall feelings of how we feel about ourselves. So alcohol is a big issue when it comes to the health of our microbiome. And then environmental toxicity. Skincare products, household cleaners, tap water, everything we are exposed to in 21st century life, where we are either breathing in or ingesting toxins on a day-to-day basis, toxins in the form that we know it, chemical estrogens, xenoestrogens, persistent organic pollutants, all of these are toxins that we take on board and that our body stores, and that will degrade the health of the microbiome. And then lastly, stress. It's really important to understand how stress impacts the health of the microbiome. So all of our good bacteria create B vitamins. B vitamins are the nutrients that help us to relax. If we are particularly stressed, we need more B vitamins than ever before to create a number of hormones. One in particular, cortisol, is a hormone that allows us to control the amount of adrenaline in our system. When cortisol rises too high in the system, it can really aggravate the health of the good bacteria. It can lead to a gut flora imbalance. It can lower our resilience to our immune system. It can lead to that imbalance. And it can basically start to wear away at our good health over a longer period of time. I'm not going to go into the stress response here, but when we have a stress response, our whole intestinal system shuts down, which in itself is an issue. But if we are continually pumping out cortisol to deal with stressful situations, that cortisol over a long period of time can really aggravate the health of the microbiome, can cause inflammation in the system, can cause hormone balance, and lots of other issues. And if you can get your microbiome health where it should be, managing stress and managing your cortisol levels on a day-to-day basis becomes a lot easier. So that's saying, if we fix the gut, we fix the problem. All disease begins in the intestine. If you fix that problem, you fix that particular issue, the gut, you will solve the problem. So let's just take a quick journey into what that means. I know I can hear you saying, well, what does that mean? How can the health of the bacteria that live in my intestine have an impact on how much weight I gain or how my hormones are balanced? How can it have an impact on how much mental clarity I have on a day-to-day basis and how confident I feel about myself? How can it have an impact on the health of my immunity? So all these things I took you through just then, our processed diet, the alcohol, the environmental toxins, all of these are classed as endotoxins that the body is exposed to. And they are toxic in their very nature to the health of the bacteria. So that bacteria forms a very solid wall, a very solid barrier on the wall of our intestine. And it prevents things passing across the gut wall that shouldn't pass across the gut wall. However, the longer it goes unfed, the longer it is aggravated and degraded, gradually you start to see holes forming in that barrier that coats the wall of the intestine. Now, if we've got food that is in the nutrient contents, the nutrients are not broken down effectively, so the food molecules are too large, if there are holes in the wall of the intestine, those food molecules can pass across the wall of the intestine, as can toxins from household cleaners, from pesticides on the food that we are eating, as can toxins in the alcohol that we might be drinking. All of this can pass across the gut wall because that barrier of microbiome of bacterial population is not as strong and as resilient as it should be. So these toxins pass into our body, into the cardiovascular system. And what happens is the body has an immune response. All of a sudden, there's these toxins that have entered, endotoxins that have entered into the system, and the body goes, whoa, I've got to get this under control. So the immune system goes into action. And imagine if you cut your finger. When you cut your finger and you have a kind of break in the barrier on your skin, the body creates a bit of inflammation. The immune system creates a little bit of inflammation around that cut to try and prevent anything passing across that break in the barrier, the skin barrier. And that's exactly the same as happens in your intestine. When the microbiome population starts to break down and that barrier that I talked about on the wall of the intestine becomes thin and holes start to form and toxins can pass through those holes, the body's immune system goes into overdrive and sets up inflammation around the gut wall to try and prevent more toxins passing across the gut wall. But it's a bit like a sieve. When you start to have holes in the wall of the intestine, so you might block one hole up with the inflammation, but then another hole develops further along, and you start to get leaks, breaks in the barrier, and these toxins start to pass across the gut wall. And that's when we get something called systemic inflammation forming, deep down inflammation in the body that we're not really aware that we have. It's not like it's on the surface, but it's inflammation that causes a stress in the body. Any stress in the body, any stress causes a stress response, but particularly stress in the body causes a stress response. So we see an increased release of adrenaline to try and deal with the stress, an increased release of cortisol to try and bring the adrenaline under control, and an increased release of sugars into the bloodstream, because that's what the adrenaline activates. Adrenaline in a stress response should activate sugars, so we've got loads of energy so that we can run, because it's a flight or fight response. But in this situation where we're not burning any energy, we've got sugars released into the bloodstream, but the adrenaline isn't using it because we don't need to create energy. So what happens is we have a buildup of cortisol in the system. Cortisol is a dominant hormone and it will steal from other hormones. So that can start to cause hormone imbalances. Cortisol is a dominant hormone to the steroid hormones like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. So it can start to cause hormone imbalances in both men and women, not just women from a fertility perspective, but also men from a fat burning perspective, from a mood perspective, from a self-worth perspective. But also that disruption in hormones, in metabolism, because we have got adrenaline constantly in the system, we are constantly releasing sugars from the glycogen stores to activate energy production. But because we're not using the energy in this situation, because it's an immune response around the inflammation and a stress response around the inflammation, these sugars aren't being used. So these sugars are constantly released into the bloodstream from the glycogen stores. We have a constant kind of hunger, essentially, because we're trying to replenish the glycogen stores. So we might see constant sugar cravings, because those sugar cravings, our brain is basically saying we need to replenish the glycogen stores. That constant sugar craving means we do eat more sugar. The hormone that is released in response to sugar is insulin. And insulin will be trying to take the sugars to the cells for energy production. As I said, we're not creating any energy because this is a stress internally. So what ends up happening is the cells start to shut down to the insulin. They say, we don't need that sugar. We don't want that sugar. We're not creating energy. And so we go into a state of insulin resistance. The insulin receptors on the cells shut down and the sugars cannot pass into the cells. So we now got all this sugar circulating in the system. We've got insulin attached to the sugars trying to do something with it. We have become insulin resistant in a pre-diabetic state. And because we have cortisol in the system, because we've got all the stress going on, we've got adrenaline. We always have cortisol when you've got high levels of adrenaline. Because we've got cortisol in the system, insulin and cortisol together are like the ugly sisters of fat, preventing us from burning fat, but making us put on weight, basically. Insulin and cortisol will take those sugars, turn them into triglycerides, and store them as fat in our fatty deposits. Now, that's not all, because all those other toxins that are passing into the system, we've got inflammation that's going on. That's what's happening around the gut wall. But these other toxins that are passing into the system, the body now has got this kind of toxic overload. And because we're putting on fat, we're starting to see more fat gain. The body can store those toxins in the fatty deposits. There's lots of evidence now, they're called obesogens, lots of evidence now to show that toxins are stored by the body in the fatty deposits. And weight gain can often be linked to a toxicity in the system and an under-functioning gut wall that is a direct result of a compromised microbiome. And if we start to gain more weight than ever before, we start to get into that obese state where we've got a lot of weight hanging around the middle, sitting around the middle. That is the worst form of fat that we can store, because it has an impact on our organs. And that in itself creates its own microcosm of hormones. So the fatty deposition starts to send the wrong messages out to the body, tells us we're hungry when we're not really hungry, prevents us from telling us when we're full. So we just overeat, which means we carry on putting on weight. And that then leads to metabolic dysfunction. The body goes into a kind of meltdown. We've got a super overactive immune system that can lead to autoimmune conditions. We've got too much sugar in the system that can lead to insulin resistance and fatty deposits and pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic. And that in itself is what's caused as metabolic dysfunction. And if you strip that all the way back, it all comes back to the health of the microbiome and how well the microbiome is preventing toxins from passing across the gut wall. So what can be done? What can we do about this system that is going on, this process that's going on in the body, to help someone achieve better health? If we have metabolic dysfunction, these are just some of the symptoms. Tiredness and poor sleep is one of them. Find me one person on a day-to-day basis that doesn't struggle with some kind of sleep issue that can long-term lead to chronic fatigue. Hormone imbalances like thyroid function, PMT, menopause symptoms, more prevalent than ever before. Headaches that are directly linked to an underfunctioning liver. Inflammation that is a sign of a weakened immune system that can lead to autoimmune conditions. So the immune system goes into overdrive, essentially, starts to attack itself. Poor skin, joint health, stubborn weight gain, all of these are issues that there is a sign of metabolic dysfunction going on. And if you are in that point where your body is in metabolic dysfunction, to grapple it back under control again is all about supporting and feeding the health of the microbiome. So how would it feel to have daily energy? How would it feel to have clear, healthy skin and strong nails? To have great sleep every night, to have perfectly balanced hormones, complete mental clarity, getting rid of the daily discomfort of bloating or IBS, ease your joint pain, and unlock your full potential. Well, you can do that. You can do it by resetting the health of the intestine yourself. I did that 3 or 4 years ago when I started to, well, 6 years ago actually, when I started to get my own intestine back under control. But it took me about 2 years to do it, 18 months to 2 years. I was using probiotics every day. I was consuming fermented foods. I was eating as much prebiotic food as I could, garlic, leeks, and onion. Artichokes are all great prebiotic foods. My diet was really good. There was no sugar in it. I had removed everything refined. I wasn't drinking any alcohol at all. Everything I was doing to support the health of my microbiome. And this process took me 18 months to get my health back under control. So now we have at our fingertips the opportunity to take back control of our microbiome and support our microbiome production. Our 21-day Purify, a 21-day program resets the health of the intestine. We can do it over 30 days as well, and some people do it more intensively over 7 days. But sometimes when our intestine is not functioning as effectively as it should be, it can never actually come back up to the level where it can then heal itself. It's trying to, but it never actually gets there. So sometimes what we need to do is target our body with key nutrients to allow those good bacterial populations to repopulate, to allow the gut microbiome to come back into balance, and therefore all those body systems to come back into alignment. To start breaking that cycle that is heading us towards metabolic dysfunction, to start reducing the inflammation in our system and the stress in our system, allowing our blood sugars to come under control, and therefore allowing the body to repair the health of the microbiome. And sometimes we just need to do that by breaking the cycle with our unique 21-day Purify program. So this program is all about focusing on foods and eating good quality foods. And you can see here some foods that are eaten in my own Purify Facebook group that I have. But it is also about using these targeted nutrients to achieve results. Posted some testimonials that I've seen in my Facebook group as people have done the program. But what I want to do first of all is bring the testimony on the left hand side is actually a good friend of mine, Faye. I train with Faye every day in the gym, and Faye posted some months ago now that she was suffering with endometriosis, and it was giving her pain on a regular basis twice a month. And so we had a conversation, just informed me. I said, it doesn't have to be like that if you don't want to. You don't want it to be like that. So I'm hoping that Faye, I'm just going to unmute you if I can. Actually, Faye, can you unmute yourself if you can hear me? And let's see if we can get you to share your testimonial.
Hello.
Hello, Faye. Thank you so much for joining me this evening.
No problem, Sue.
So, Faye, you and I train together on a regular basis, don't we?
We do, most days, yes.
Yeah. And you happened to make a comment on Facebook, I think it was, where you were struggling with endometriosis. We sat down and had a coffee, and we talked about supporting the health of your microbiome, supporting the health of your liver, and how that could help you as far as your endometriosis was concerned. So, do you want to tell everybody that's listening, what was life like for you before you went down the road of supporting your gut microbiome?
Yeah, no problem. So I was diagnosed with endometriosis after having my children. Thankfully, it hadn't affected my fertility, but I'd always had really heavy periods and terrible PMT symptoms, very emotional and unbalanced around the time of the month. Extremely heavy bleeding was all I'd ever known, really. And after having the children, I was diagnosed with endometriosis, and I'd had, I think before we spoke, Sue, probably 3 surgeries to try to remove some of the endometrial tissue and alleviate some of the symptoms. And the length of time in between those surgeries was getting shorter and shorter, and I was looking at probably having a hysterectomy within the next 12 to 18 months. I made a flippant comment, I think, about being in a really terrible mood and in pain on social media, and you picked up on it, and we obviously had a conversation about how resetting the microbiome would help with my symptoms. And I think at that stage I was ready to give anything a go, really.
So go on, yes, carry on.
Yeah, so I got my holiday out of the way and committed to doing the Pure 21 program with your help and support, and it's been a great success for me.
So we cut out all the rubbish, basically, the crap, caffeine, refined sugar, alcohol, and processed food for those 21 days, didn't we? And you followed the 21-day purified program with all those targeted nutrients to really clean your system, get rid of all those toxins, allow your liver to work more effectively, and get your gut microbiome repopulated and replenished. And what has been the result for you over the last few months? I know you finished the program before Christmas, didn't you?
Yeah.
We did a maintenance month, didn't we? And then since then, you've just been kind of functioning normally on a day-to-day basis now, haven't you? So tell everyone what the results for you were.
So I had results very quickly in terms of my energy levels were through the roof. I'm not a morning person, and I was waking up before my alarm clock. I was only 10 or 11 days into the program when my period arrived, and it caught me by surprise because I'd had none of the hormonal symptoms that I'd usually get. And on the whole, I've been pain-free from my endometriosis, and I'm one of those unfortunate people that also gets ovulation pain and symptoms. So I wasn't just getting pain once a month, it was twice a month. I'd have a good week, a terrible week, a good week, and then a terrible week, and I don't get any of that now. I did notice when my caffeine intake crept back up after finishing the program that my symptoms did start to rear their head a little bit, so I cut that back again. And generally I do follow that cutting out the crap. You know, 5 days out of 7 my diet is as good as it can be, and that keeps me on an even keel. So generally there's no tantrums or tears once a month, there's no pain, and I just don't really notice my cycle at all now, whereas I could set my clock by it before.
Yeah, brilliant. And there was one other little thing that I know you said to me in January, for various different reasons. You decided to do veganuary, didn't you? And you started to feel really, really exhausted, and you realised that you hadn't been taking your pro-arginine, which is one of the products within the Purify program.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what happened? So you took it that first morning, and what happened with your energy levels?
And I was finally felt like myself again. I was back to being full of beans. So I try not to forget my pro-arginine now. I do. I've just been away for a weekend in Dublin, and it wasn't really party central, but I took my pro-arginine with me. Took 2 sachets a day to keep me going, and it worked perfectly.
Good. Well, Faye, I'm so pleased for you. I'm so pleased for you and your family as well. That means that you've managed to get rid of that twice monthly pain on a regular basis, and really take back control of your health. Faye, so thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
No problem, and thank you for your help, Sue.
You're very welcome.
Okay,
and I'll
bye.
see you soon. I'll see you tomorrow, probably in the gym. Bye. So there you've heard Faye's testimonial, and I've got one more colleague of mine. Faye actually is a PT and runs a PT business locally to me in Worcester, but I also have a good friend, Amy. Amy Oldfield runs a very busy personal training, small group training studio in Bristol called Empowered Fitness. And Amy and I have known each other for a few months, and Amy got in touch with me after Christmas, after listening to a microbiome I did in January. And Amy, I'm wondering if you might unmute yourself. It's telling me that you are self-muted, so maybe you need to just click that microphone at the top of your screen to unmute yourself. There we go. Amy, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Hi, Sue.
Hi, Amy. So, Amy, thank you as well for coming on this evening. I really appreciate it. So, Amy, you are, as I said, a personal trainer. Your life is super busy all the time. Your food is pretty much on point. Your health is where you would expect it to be. But there was that just one chink in your health that was bothering you on a regular basis, wasn't it? Do you want to tell everybody what happened before we started speaking about the Purify program?
Yeah, of course. So for the last 2 years, I've had a problem with extreme abdominal bloating, which is both uncomfortable and frustrating and very difficult when you're trying to look like a PT and you have a stomach that looks like you're 6 months pregnant. So this had obviously been bothering me for a long time, and I really needed to get it sorted.
And you went on holiday, didn't you, and couldn't really wear a bikini, or did wear a bikini but felt particularly uncomfortable in it because you felt so bloated all the time?
Yeah, so I know a lot of people experience bloating, but the kind of bloating that I have after eating seemingly random foods, there wasn't any pattern to it, which was one of the most annoying things. I couldn't really identify what was causing it. But yeah, I would get bloated, literally look like I was heavily pregnant. And this happened to me whilst I was on holiday over Christmas, and I had to sit on the beach in a bikini feeling extremely self-conscious and wondering how on earth I could get rid of this problem.
So what attracted you to the Purify program then?
Well, obviously being in the health and fitness industry, I know quite a bit about nutrition anyway. So as I started to listen to the things that you were saying about how you can start to repair the microbiome, it just made sense. It was definitely in sync with what I know and what I understand about how to improve your gut health. And there were some things there that I wasn't doing. So it seemed very straightforward. It seemed like it was helping a lot of other people. And I thought I'd give it a go.
You've got nothing to lose, really, had you?
Absolutely. I'd tried other things in the past. I'd been on an anti-candida diet for several months to no avail. I'd sort of half given a FODMAP diet a shot. I've had colonics to try and overcome the problem, but nothing really worked.
And so you did Pure 21, you finished it this week, just gone. Sorry, Purify program. You did it this week and you finished it this week, just gone. And what have the results for you been?
They've been brilliant. I cannot speak highly enough of this program. So my bloating has pretty much gone, which feels like a miracle for me. So that's been a huge win because that was what I really set out to achieve. But on top of that, I also feel amazing. So my mood has really lifted. My clarity of mind is fantastic. I have great energy. My sleep is brilliant. My sugar cravings have gone. Hunger is down. And I feel like quite a different person, actually. I think it's fantastic and would highly recommend to anyone that's looking to improve their health in any way.
And so what would you say then to others? If someone was deliberating whether to do Purify program, what would you say to them?
Absolutely, give it a go. I say this to the clients that I work with in my personal training company as well, that you must invest in your health and you must trust the experts. So you obviously are very experienced in this field, Sue, and your knowledge has been great for me. So, you know, you must invest in your health. You can't put a price on it and you'll feel great. So give it a go. You've got nothing to lose. And it's only 21 days. It goes really quick and it's actually surprisingly easy. And the reason that it is easy is because you feel so good. So when you start to feel good and you see results, that motivates you to keep doing it. That's what I would say.
Thank you so much, Amy. I really appreciate your time. Yeah, it's so compelling, and you just put it in exactly how everybody wants to hear it, basically, because you cannot put a price on your health. You cannot put a price on how that has an impact on your wider family, on your productivity, on in your case, on your client's health as well, because you radiate that energy and they draw on that energy as well. So I really do appreciate, Amy, you coming on this evening and giving up your time this evening. This is not the first time this evening that I've drawn on Amy to give me a testimonial. So thank you so much, Amy. And I'll talk to you very soon. Take care.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you. Bye-bye. So there you go. That is our Purify kit, products, all clinically trialed and designed to reset the health of the microbiome, to feed the good bacteria, to keep the bacterial populations working as they should be working, to ensure that you can unlock your potential and achieve elite health. If you purify and you get rid of toxins out of your system and you support your microbiome, you can achieve long-term better health. If you don't purify before you go on a health regime, for example, and you don't get those toxins out of your system, you will always be bounding back to where you were at the beginning. You will be yo-yoing, whether it's health, whether it's weight loss, whatever it is. Until those toxins are out of your system, until your microbiome population is supported, balanced and healthy, it will always be difficult to achieve elite health. If you purify, first of all, get rid of those toxins, you will continue to make strides as far as your health is concerned. Now, I put this saying in because I love this saying. Instead of saying it's too expensive, try saying my health is just not worth the investment. Find me one person that thinks it's better to say it's too expensive than that they may not do it, but even so, to say my health is not worth the investment, belittles what basically who you are and how you function on a day-to-day basis. So, good health begins by targeting the core, the microbiome. If you are on this webinar for the first time, you've not heard this webinar before, or you need to know more information, do go back to the person that introduced you to the webinar originally and have a conversation with them about how you can access the Purify program. For those of you that have been on the webinar before and heard our microbiome presentations in a number of ways, I do really appreciate your time this evening. If you have guests on the webinar tonight, do make sure you follow up with them. I thank you for your time. I've gone 3 minutes over my 40 minutes. I apologise, Kim. But thank you everyone for joining me this evening. I hope you found that useful. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much to Kim for organising the webinar system. And do join Kim 2 weeks, Thursday the 28th of February, when Kim will be doing her take on the microbiome and how you can improve your health long term. Next Wednesday, we have our own Jake Rothfeld from head office in Utah talking about Heart Health Month. It's well worth logging on and listening to that. As I say, thank you so much for joining me this evening, and take care. Have a great rest of the evening, and I will see you very soon. Bye-bye.